Mia. Once upon a time, there was a young mermaid who wanted to become human. She was not happy as a mermaid, despite the fact that she lived in one of the nicest coral reefs in the ocean. "You have a lovely home," said her mother. "You have lots of friends," said her father. "Why are you always so sad?" said her best friend Beetle the dolphin. "Oh, Beetle," said Mia the mermaid, "I want to be human." There was a moment of silence before Beetle threw back his head and laughed. Mia and Beetle had been friends for many years, but Beetle had never heard such a crazy thing as this. Mia, looking embarrassed, kicked the sand with her left fin. Beetle began to feel bad about laughing at her crazy statement. "Why would you want to be human when you can swim all day?" Beetle questioned. "I don't know," Mia said sheepishly, even though she still wanted to be human.
A few hours later, Mia was swimming around her home library when she came across a shocking title. The library was her favorite place in her home, and she always went there when she was upset. The library was huge, and in all of her 19 years, there were still corners of the amazing place she had not yet explored. All the books had lovely pictures of humans with their long limbs supposedly called legs. The library was one of the reasons she so badly wanted to be human. The many hours Mia had spent in the library looking over those pictures were astounding. The title of the book read Water, Wizards, and Warlocks. She lifted the heavy book off the dusty shelf and carried it over to one of the many large clam cells, perfect for reading. As she pried off some sticky muscles and sharp barnacles off the old book, a strong current flipped the book open to chapter 7. The picture on the page was of a goofy-looking shark with crazy glasses and a colorful bow tie. The shark reminded her of her wacky science teacher at the Development School for Young Mermaids. His gray hair stuck out in every direction. The name below the picture said Professor Munch. The text continued to describe the professor's powers and interests. The last sentence read, "Famous for human transformations. Lives at 52 Cave Crescent, past the Wild Whirlpool." A thought flashed through Mia's mind, and she was on her way before the book even hit the floor.
By the time Mia reached 52 Cave Crescent, her tail ached from the long swim and effort it took her to get past the whirlpool. The cave was a nice front, symbolizing that the professor was wealthy. She knocked on the heavy rock door and waited. "Come in," said a deep, friendly voice. As Mia slowly entered the cave, she swam down a long hallway into a brightly lit room where the shark was bent over a table mixing a bright green liquid with a dark blue one. He slid the protective goggles off his face, turning and smiling a toothy, welcoming grin. "Welcome, my darling," he paused and gestured to his home. "To my cave. What can I help you with today?" "Well, actually," Mia cleared her voice and began again in as much of a steady voice as she could muster. "I came here for you to turn me into a human." "Oh my! What would make you want to do that?" Never mind. I think I have the spell for you." He disappeared into the dark room off to his study. He returned a moment later with a bright purple liquid in a pretty glass bottle. He unscrewed the lid and an awful stench reeked from the bottom. "Drink up, and your wishes will come true." Mia unashamedly took the bottle from the press-stud, looked at it skeptically, and guzzled the liquid as fast as she could. Surprisingly, it did not taste as bad as she expected. For a few seconds, nothing happened, and then all of a sudden the world began to spin, and Mia found herself in a dark, empty kitchen.
1, 2, 3, or not. "Cinderella, where's my tea?" an angry voice called. Mia ignored it, wondering where she was. She heard heavy footsteps coming down a staircase above her. Two small young women burst into the kitchen, letting the door slam behind him. "You better hurry with this tea. You know how he gets." Mia just stood in the kitchen looking perplexed. "Here, I'll help you." The taller woman walked over to a cupboard and took out a cup and saucer. "Don't just stand there. Please get the milk." Mia looked around at her surroundings again and blinked, hoping it would all disappear. No such luck. "Where am I? Who are you? Why am I here?" Mia finally looked towards the floor and noticed she had those weird things on the end of her legs, which she remembered from a book as feet. The girls looked at each other and laughed. "You are Cinderella, we are Betty and Veronica. That is our father calling upstairs because he is very angry you hadn't gotten his tea. Your mother died 2 years ago, and he took over the family fortune, house, and sadly, your life. You are our stepsister. Now hurry up, or he will punish you." "Actually, my name is Mia. I am a mermaid, and I am not human." "Oh, Ella, stop kidding around and get our father his tea." Mia had no choice but to obey. She finished making the tea, and moments later she was carrying a silver tray up the grand marble staircase in the strange mansion. The woman had directed her to the second bedroom on the left.
She slowly opened the door and stood in the doorway, unsure of what to do. "Well, aren't you going to come in?" the same booming voice that had demanded for the tea called. Mia rounded the corner of the dark bedroom into a small study, where a tall, thin man sat in a red armchair reading a newspaper. The man put the paper down and frowned. "What took you so long? I've been waiting for ages." "Sorry," Mia stuttered. "I guess I was distracted." "Don't worry. I'm sure you won't let it happen again." He smiled, a cold, dark, grimacing-like smile, unwelcoming and unfriendly. "Well, don't just stand there. Get on with your chore." He handed over a slip of paper crammed with messy writing and impossibly hard chores. "Get out of here." Mia left the cranky old man to his reading and started on the first chore: mop every floor. The list continued on. Each chore made a different part of Mia's body hurt. At the end of the day, Mia had enough. She scribbled a note to her stepsisters and took off her apron and darted out the door.
Mia had no idea where she was going, but she ran as fast as she could, which wasn't very fast because she still wasn't used to her new legs, in a random direction. She ran for what must have been hours before she stopped to eat some berries off a blooming bush. When she finished her snack, Mia continued to run with only her thoughts to keep her company. By the time she had ran many kilometers, the sky grew black. Mia scaled a tree, impressed by her newfound climbing abilities, and settled down for the night, rolling around until she found a comfortable position. Mia's plan for the following day was to find a magical person to turn her into a mermaid again. She was almost asleep when she heard a strange voice singing not too far away. Mia climbed out of her tree and followed the sound of the voice. She followed the beaten path until she came upon a small cave carved from the mountain above it. Now closer to the voice, Mia could tell it was female. Tentatively, Mia took a step inside, and immediately the voice stopped. A short, plump fairy stared at Mia curiously. "Who are you?" the fairy asked. "I'm Mia. I'm an enchanted mermaid." A look of curiosity swept across the lady's face. She grinned brightly and gestured for Mia to enter her cave. "Come in. Welcome to my home. Can I get anything for you?" Mia shook her head and looked around. It was a small cave, just right size for one person. In the room they were standing in, currently, there was a shelf of odd-looking things and bottles that took up an entire wall. There was a large table in the middle of the room with two old wooden chairs. The old lady disappeared into one of the rooms off the main hallway leading out of the room Mia was in. Mia slowly settled herself into one of the chairs and waited for the woman to return. A few seconds later she did, carrying an odd assortment of weirdly colored cakes and pastries. "Go ahead, eat your fill." The plump lady smiled again and reached for a strange blue cake. Mia shrugged and took a violet candy off the top of the pile. Putting it all in her mouth at once, Mia grimaced as she swallowed the disgusting food. "That one was Troll's foot," the lady now informed the mermaid. Mia gagged once again and coughed. "So tell me your story," the old lady mused. Mia did. She sat in the cave of this odd woman whom she didn't in the slightest know, and poured her heart out. Quite a while later, when Mia finished telling her story to the woman got up for a second time and left the room. This time in her hand she came back holding a clear bottle with a sparkling black potion. "Drink this," she demanded, with what Mia now recognized as an evil smile. Before Mia had a chance to object or defend herself, the old woman was shoving the dark liquid down her throat. A strange, uncomfortable burning feeling in Mia's throat made her stumble around in order not to collapse. Then the world began to spin, and when Mia opened her eyes next, she found herself staring at the old lady from the floor. She looked at her feet, green and slimy. She looked at her hands, green and slimy. She looked at herself in a broken chunk of glass that must have fallen from the table, green and slimy. Mia began to hyperventilate. She was a creature she had once read in her books from the library. A frog. The witch, as Mia now considered her, stared down at Mia with a satisfactory grin on her face. "Get out of here! What are you waiting for?" she demanded impatiently. Mia hopped out of the cave as fast as she could, away from the evil woman. Mia was angry at herself for not recognizing the old lady as her fairy godmother. She knew about this term from one of the books she had read in her home library, though in the books fairy godmothers were always nice. She ran until she had a desperate need for water. She jumped in a small creek and rolled around for a few minutes to wet her parched skin. All of a sudden a current picked up, and Mia found herself being swept away to a marshy pond. The pond was large, with tall bulrushes and grass surrounding the perimeter. Lily pads floated on top of the clear, still water. A fly flew down and settled on a pad beside her. Without thinking, her tongue flicked out from her mouth and swallowed the fly whole. Surprisingly, it didn't taste too bad. Kind of salty, actually. Mia slowly swam around the pond, and with not a sign of life around her. The water was cool and soothing on her slimy skin. Wanting to explore some more, Mia glided out of the water and onto a damp soil. She prepared to take a nap under the tall plants that shaded her from the hot sun. She was closing her eyes when a dark shape swooped down on the sky above her. Mia screamed, prepared to be eaten, when a huge impact knocked her out of the way and knocked her back into the pond. Mia stared down at the water, which bore the reflection of her rescuer. Another frog. After an awkward moment of silence, Mia decided to thank him.
Thank you. You saved my life. What can I do to repay you? The frog looked into her eyes as a smile crept across his face. You're welcome. I don't get many visitors around here. Yeah, well, I'm kind of new to the whole frog thing, but you can probably tell. Are you sure there's nothing I can do to repay you? Actually, there's one thing you can do for me, the male frog said thoughtfully. I am actually an enchanted prince, turned into a frog by an evil witch many years ago. She said the only way I can turn back into human is to find another enchanted frog to kiss me. Are you enchanted in any way? Mia blushed and looked down at her web deed. As a matter of fact, I am. My supposed fairy godmother turned me into a frog, and I used to be a mermaid. Well, then why don't you kiss me? He said sarcastically. I am waiting. I've never seen an enchanted frog since the day I was cursed. I've never kissed someone before, but maybe I'll turn into human too. Maybe. The frog shrugged unknowingly. Well, I guess it's worth a try. Mia leaned forward, and when their lips touched, the world began to spin for the third time, and Mia squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, she was looking at eyes of a handsome man wearing a royal envy. Mia looked down at her body. Human again, she smiled, and so did the prince. Together they held hands and made their way to a beautiful castle in the distance that Mia never noticed as a frog.
What was that? Epilogue. It turns out the handsome prince's name was Prince Michael. Michael's parents were extremely worried about him. Michael and his parents made Mia the princess of their kingdom. In the castle there was a portal so the mermaid world, so Mia could visit her family and friends. Mia went back to the evil stepfather's home and freed her stepsisters and made them her ladies-in-waiting. The prince and princess lived happily ever after.